You know what the problem with being a bureaucrat in the Galactic Council is? Nobody tells you the truth until it is far, far too late. My name is Vril Tokmar, and I have been a mid-level compliance observer for the Council for approximately 14 cycles. 14 cycles of monitoring trade disputes, 14 cycles of filing reports that nobody reads, 14 cycles of absolute mind-numbing boredom. So when they assigned me to oversee the human integration protocols at Station Meridian 7, I thought, finally, something interesting. Oh, how spectacularly wrong I was. Let me back up. Humans, if you have not had the pleasure, are what we politely call a Category 9 Deathworld species. What that actually means is that their home planet is a nightmare hellscape that should not support intelligent life, and yet somehow these bipedal maniacs not only survived but thrived. Earth has weather patterns that can level cities, predators that can crush steel, diseases that mutate faster than our best scientists can track, and gravity that would make most species need mechanical assistance just to turn upright. The humans? They call it home. They call it, and I am not making this up, cozy. But the Council, in its infinite wisdom, decided that humanity had achieved sufficient technological development to warrant provisional membership. Provisional, meaning we were going to watch them very, very carefully, because the last time we let a Deathworld species into the Council without proper vetting, the Krynox ate 3 diplomatic delegations before we realized they considered negotiation to be a form of foreplay. Station Meridian 7 sits at the edge of neutral space, a perfect location for cultural exchange and mutual understanding. It is also, as I would soon learn, a perfect location for everything to go catastrophically wrong. The day it happened, I was in my office reviewing what had to be the most tedious complaint I had ever seen. Some Flixian merchant was upset because a human trader had sold him what he called substandard protein bars. The human defense was that the bars were perfectly fine and that the Flixian simply had, quote, weak stomach game. I was still trying to figure out what game had to do with digestive systems when my communicator started screaming. Not beeping. Screaming. Observer Tukmar. The voice belonged to Station Security Chief Morvin Kalade, and he sounded like someone had just told him his ship was on fire. We have a situation in Market District 7. You need to get here immediately. I have learned that when security uses the word situation, what they actually mean is disaster that will probably end my career. I grabbed my data tablet and hurried through the station corridors, my 4 legs carrying me as fast as dignity would allow. The Market District was usually peaceful, a place where dozens of species mingled to trade goods, share meals, and pretend that ancient grudges did not exist. Today, however, I could hear the commotion 3 corridors away. The crowd had formed a circle, and in the center stood Enforcer Dravix Call. Now Dravix is what we call a Thorian, which means he is approximately 8 feet tall, covered in armored plates, and has the personality of a territorial predator who skipped breakfast. He is also, technically, within his rights to enforce council law on the station. Technically, what Dravix was not within his rights to do was grab a human child by the arm hard enough to leave marks. The child, a small female who could not have been more than 6 or 7 years old by human standards, was crying. Not screaming, not throwing a tantrum, just quietly crying in that way that makes even my cold, bureaucratic heart feel something uncomfortable. Standing between Dravix and the child was a human female, mid-30s, with dark skin and hair pulled back in what humans call a ponytail. Her stance was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that predators display right before they strike. "Let go of my daughter," the woman said. Her voice was level, almost pleasant. Now, Dravix, demonstrating the intelligence that had gotten him assigned to this backwater station in the first place, did not let go. Instead, he yanked the child closer. This juvenile stole from a vendor. Dravix announced to the crowd, "I am authorized to detain thieves regardless of age." "She took 1 piece of fruit," the mother said, still in that terrifyingly calm voice. "She is 6 years old, and she thought it was a sample. I was coming back to pay for it." "Theft is theft," Dravix said. And then, because the universe apparently decided that this day needed to get worse, he struck the child across the face, not hard enough to cause serious injury. Just hard enough to make a point, just hard enough to make the biggest mistake of his entire life. The market went silent, completely, utterly silent. Even the background hum of the station seemed to pause, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The human mother did not scream, did not shout. She simply moved, I have seen combat footage. I have watched training simulations of various species' military forces. I have never in all my cycles seen anything move the way that human woman moved. One moment she was 3 feet away, the next her hand was around Dravix's throat, and his feet were dangling 6 inches off the ground. 8 feet of armored Thorian enforcer, lifted like he weighed nothing. "You," the woman said, her voice now carrying an edge that could cut steel, "just made a very, very bad choice." Dravix tried to speak, but the pressure on his throat made it come out as a wheeze. He reached for his sidearm, a standard council-issue plasma restrainer, but before his hand could even touch the grip, the woman's other hand snapped out and caught his wrist. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the market. That was when I finally found my voice. "Everyone, please, let us all remain calm." The woman's eyes swiveled to me and I forgot how to speak. I have looked into the eyes of apex predators. I have faced down angry mob bosses and corrupt officials. None of that prepared me for the look a human mother gives when someone has hurt her child. "Security is on the way," I managed to squeak out. "We will resolve this appropriately." "Oh, it will be resolved," the woman said. She released Dravix, who crumpled to the ground gasping. She scooped up her daughter with one arm, checked the child's face with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the violence of moments before, and then looked at me again. "My name is Kelly Winters. My husband is Commander Marcus Winters of the Earth Defense Exploration Fleet. He is going to want to know about this." My blood, all 3 types of it, ran cold. The Earth Defense Exploration Fleet, EDF for short, the human military branch that had just last cycle successfully repelled a Krynox raiding party using nothing but kinetic weapons and what their report called creative problem solving. The same EDF that had 3 ships currently docked at this very station. "I am certain we can discuss this reasonably," I said, trying to project calm authority and probably failing miserably. "If you would please come to my office." "I will be in my quarters," Kelly Winters said. She looked down at Dravix, who was still on the ground. "And he should start running." She walked away, her daughter tucked safely against her shoulder, and the crowd parted for her like she was radioactive, which, given what I knew about human protective instincts, she might as well have been. Dravix finally got to his feet, cradling his broken wrist. "You saw that?" He snarled at me. "She assaulted an officer of the council. I want her arrested immediately." I looked at him. Really looked at him. At his bruised throat, his broken wrist, his rumpled uniform. And I thought about the fact that I had just watched him strike a child in front of dozens of witnesses. "What I saw," I said carefully, "was you striking a minor without proper cause. What I saw was you creating an interstellar incident. What I saw was you potentially starting a war. Over one human child?" Dravix laughed, though it sounded strained. "The council will never—" "The council," interrupted Security Chief Kell, who had finally arrived with a full security team, "does not make decisions based on what we think is reasonable. The council makes decisions based on treaty law. And according to the Human Integration Treaty, any act of violence against a human minor is considered grounds for immediate disciplinary review." Dravix's face, what little I could see past his armor plates, went pale. "You cannot be serious." "Article 12, Section 4, I said, pulling up the relevant document on my tablet. "Violence against minors of any species by council personnel shall be treated with maximum severity." It was the humans' only non-negotiable demand during treaty negotiations. "Why would they?" Dravix started to say. "Because they are humans," Calais said flatly. "Because their entire species has an irrational, overwhelming protective instinct toward their young. Because hurting their children is literally the one thing guaranteed to make them abandon all reason and diplomacy." I nodded. "We tried to tell you this in the cultural briefings. Did you not attend any of them?" Dravix said nothing, which was answer enough. "Get to the medical bay," Cal ordered, "and then get to your quarters and stay there until we sort this out." As Dravix limped away, I turned to Calais. "How bad is this going to get?" Cale's expression was grim. He is a Vexian, so grim for him involves all 4 of his eyes narrowing at once. "Commander Winters' ship docked 2 hours ago. He was meeting with Admiral Crane about extending their patrol route. Want to guess what he is doing right now?" I did not need to guess. I knew. 30 minutes later I was proven correct when Commander Marcus Winters walked into station control like he owned the place. He was tall even for a human, with the kind of build that suggested he had personally wrestled the gravity on his homeworld into submission. His uniform was crisp, his expression was neutral, and his eyes were the coldest things I had ever seen. "Station administrator," he said, his voice perfectly professional. "I would like to file a formal complaint regarding an assault on a member of my family by one of your enforcers." Administrator Ulith, a Hixian who had been doing this job for 30 cycles and thought he had seen everything, actually trembled. "Commander Winters, I assure you that we are taking this matter very seriously. The enforcer in question has been confined to quarters." "Confined to quarters," Winters repeated. "How interesting. Tell me, Administrator, what would happen if I walked into your home and struck your child?" Ulith's skin changed colors, cycling through confusion, fear, and resignation. "That is not a fair comparison, is it not?" Winters leaned forward slightly. "Because from where I am standing, one of your people assaulted my 6-year-old daughter for the crime of taking a piece of fruit she thought was free. He then struck her in the face, in front of witnesses, and your response is to send him to his room." "Commander, please understand," I interjected. "We are following proper protocol for—" "I understand perfectly," Winters said, turning those cold eyes on me. "I understand that this station operates under council law. I also understand that council law has very specific provisions regarding violence against children. Shall I recite Article 12, Section 4 for you?" "That will not be necessary," Ulith said quickly. "Commander, what would you consider an appropriate response?" Winters smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "I would consider it appropriate for Enforcer Dravix Kull to be formally charged, tried, and sentenced according to council law. I would also consider it appropriate for him to be banned from ever serving in any position of authority over children again." "That seems reasonable," Ulith said, clearly relieved that Winters was not demanding blood. However, Winters continued, and Ulith's relief evaporated. "I should inform you that my wife has already contacted Earth, and Earth has contacted the human diplomatic mission on the Council homeworld. And the diplomatic mission has invoked Protocol 7. I felt my organs all try to relocate to different parts of my body. Protocol 7. The humans had included it in their treaty as a safety measure, a way to ensure that their people were protected even in Council space. Nobody had expected them to ever use it. Protocol 7 allowed Earth to dispatch a military tribunal to investigate crimes against human citizens. "They cannot," Ulith whispered. "A military tribunal in Council space would set a precedent that what?" Winters asked. "That species are allowed to protect their own citizens, that we take threats to our children seriously? Tell me, Administrator, which part concerns you more? The precedent or the fact that you will have to explain to the Council why you failed to prevent this situation?" The room was silent except for the hum of the station's life support. Finally Ulith spoke. "What do you want, Commander?" "I want Dravix Kull tried and sentenced. I want a formal apology from the Council. And I want every single enforcer on this station to undergo mandatory training on appropriate use of force, especially regarding minors. And if we agree to this, you will call off the tribunal?" Winters considered this. "No. The tribunal is coming regardless. But if you cooperate, I will recommend leniency in their assessment of how this station is managed." Ulith looked like he wanted to argue, but he was smart enough to know when he had lost. "Very well. We will cooperate fully." Winters nodded. "Good. I will be in my quarters with my family. You know where to find me when the tribunal arrives." He left, and the silence that followed was deafening. "Observer Tokmar," Ulith said quietly. "Find me everything you can about human legal systems, human military tribunals, and human cultural attitudes toward children. I need to know exactly what we are dealing with." I spent the next 6 hours reading, and what I learned terrified me. Humans, it turns out, have spent their entire evolutionary history protecting their young at all costs. They have laws, customs, and cultural practices all centered around child safety. They have stories, myths, and legends about the terrible things that happen to those who harm children. They have a phrase, Mama Bear, that refers to the protective fury of a human mother, based on one of their planet's most dangerous predators. And they have a military that takes attacks on human citizens very, very personally. The tribunal arrived 3 days later. It consisted of 5 humans, all wearing the formal uniform of the Earth Defense Exploration Fleet's Judge Advocate General Corps. They were professional, polite, and absolutely terrifying in their efficiency. The lead prosecutor was a woman named Colonel Mara Hunt. She was small, barely 5.5 feet tall, with gray hair and glasses. She looked like someone's grandmother. She proceeded to dismantle Dravix Kol's defense like a surgeon removing a tumor. The trial lasted 2 days. 2 days of witness testimony, video evidence, and expert analysis. 2 days of Dravix trying to claim he was just doing his job, that the child had committed theft, that he had used appropriate force. 2 days of Colonel Hunt calmly, methodically proving that he was lying. On the 3rd day, the tribunal delivered its verdict. Guilty on all charges: assault of a minor, abuse of authority, violation of council-human treaty provisions. The sentence was read aloud in the station's central courtroom, broadcast to every screen on Meridian 7. Enforcer Dravix Kol is hereby stripped of rank, banned from council service, and sentenced to 5 cycles in a rehabilitation facility specializing in anger management and cultural sensitivity. Furthermore, he is permanently barred from any Hennessy involving authority over minors of any species. Dravix stood there, his armor seeming to shrink around him, and said nothing. But here is the thing that everyone on that station learned, the thing that spread through council space faster than light-speed communication. The humans did not execute Dravix. They did not demand his head, despite the dramatic rumors that had spread through the station. They demanded justice, fair, proportional justice, according to law. And somehow that was more frightening than any threat of violence could have been, because it meant the humans were not irrational. They were not mindless savages who would lash out at any provocation. They were controlled, organized, and absolutely committed to protecting their people through legal and proper channels, which meant that if you harmed a human, especially a human child, you would not face a quick death in combat. You would face the full weight of human law, human bureaucracy, and human determination. And that, my friends, is so much worse. The tribunal left after the sentencing. Commander Winters thanked them formally, shook hands with Administrator Eulith in what I am certain was a deliberately painful grip, and returned to his ship. Kelly Winters, before she left, stopped by my office. Observer Tokmar, she said, I want to thank you for your help during this process. I did very little, I admitted. The tribunal handled everything. You filed an accurate report. She said, you did not try to minimize what happened or protect Dravix. In a system as bureaucratic as the council, that actually matters. I nodded, not sure what to say. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. My daughter is fine, by the way. She was scared, but she is resilient. Kids usually are. I am glad, I said, and I meant it. One more thing, she added, her smile fading slightly. Tell your colleagues, tell anyone who will listen, that humans do not want war. We do not want conflict. We just want our children to be safe. Is that really so much to ask? No, I said quietly. It is not. She left, and I sat in my office for a long time thinking about everything that had happened. The council learned several important lessons from the Meridian 7 incident. First, never underestimate a human parent. Second, human justice is scarier than human violence. And third, most importantly, if you want to maintain peaceful relations with humanity, there is one simple rule that overrides all others. Do not touch their kids. Just do not. Trust me on this one. So you would think that after the Meridian 7 incident, as it came to be known throughout council space, things would settle down. You would think that everyone would learn their lesson, file the appropriate reports, and go back to the boring routine of intergalactic bureaucracy. You would be wrong, because 3 months after the tribunal, I got promoted. Yes, promoted. Apparently, filing an accurate report and not lying to protect a fellow council employee makes you some kind of hero in the eyes of upper management. They made me senior compliance observer and gave me oversight of all human integration protocols across 6 stations. My predecessor, a Phelaxian named Quarn, who had been doing the job for 20 cycles, took one look at the assignment and retired immediately. Just handed me the data files, wished me luck, and walked out humming what I can only assume was a funeral dirge. I should have known something was wrong when he started laughing halfway down the corridor. My new office was bigger, which was nice. My new responsibilities were terrifying, which was not. I now had to monitor human interactions across multiple stations, coordinate with Earth diplomatic missions, and somehow prevent another interstellar incident from occurring on my watch. The Council, in their infinite wisdom, had also decided that we needed better cultural exchange programs. What this actually meant was that they wanted me to organize events where humans and other species could interact in controlled, supervised environments where nobody would accidentally start a war. The first event was a disaster. Well, not a disaster in the traditional sense. Nobody died, nobody was injured, but I learned something very important about humans that day, something that the cultural briefings had somehow failed to mention. Humans are competitive about everything. The event was supposed to be a friendly sports exhibition. Various species would demonstrate their traditional games. Everyone would appreciate the diversity of galactic culture, and we would all leave with a greater understanding of one another. Instead, what happened was that a human teenager named Jake Ramos challenged a Krillian warrior to something called an arm wrestling match. Now, Krillians are strong, very strong. They have 4 arms, each capable of lifting approximately 300 pounds. They are bred for combat, raised on a high-gravity world, and generally considered to be among the most physically powerful species in Council space. Jake Ramos was 17 years old, weighed maybe 160 pounds, and had apparently been working on his uncle's farm over the summer. The match lasted 4 seconds. The Krillian warrior, a decorated veteran named Throck, who had fought in 3 border conflicts, stared at his defeated arm like it had betrayed him. "How?" he whispered. Jake shrugged. "I work out, I guess. You want to go best 2 out of 3. That was how I learned that human adolescents, despite not being fully grown, possess something called teenager strength that defies all logical explanation. It has something to do with their growth hormones, their bone density, and apparently sheer stubbornness. The arm wrestling tournament continued. Jake Ramos defeated 6 more opponents before finally losing to a Thorian female who outweighed him by 400 pounds. Even then, it took her nearly 30 seconds, but that was not the real problem. The real problem started when someone suggested a game of soccer. For those unfamiliar, soccer is a human sport involving kicking a ball into a goal. It sounds simple. It sounds harmless. It is neither of those things. The humans formed one team. Various other species formed the opposing team. The rules were explained. Boundaries were set, and I thought foolishly that this would be fine. 10 minutes into the game, I had to call the medical team for 3 separate species who had pulled muscles trying to keep up with the humans. 20 minutes in, the Vexian goalkeeper quit, claiming that trying to track human movements was giving him a headache across all 4 of his eyes. At the 30-minute mark, the score was humans 23, everyone else 0, and I was seriously considering just canceling all future cultural events forever. A human woman named Patricia Okoye, who worked as a maintenance engineer on the station, scored 7 goals by herself. When asked how she was so good, she explained that she had played casually in college and had not touched a ball in 5 years. Casually. 5 years of no practice. 7 goals in 30 minutes. The match ended when one of the human players trying to pass the ball accidentally kicked it so hard that it punched through the reinforced wall of the gymnasium and embedded itself in the corridor outside. Nobody was hurt, but the maintenance report took 3 days to file. After that, I implemented new rules. All human sporting events would be humans versus humans only. Everyone else could watch, but participation was restricted for safety reasons. Safety for the non-humans. But sports were not the only thing I had to worry about. Oh no, because humans, I learned, are also very enthusiastic about sharing their culture, specifically their food. The incident happened at Station Kelvar 9, one of the larger hubs under my supervision. A human chef named Marcus Chen, no relation to any other person named Marcus in human history I am sure, opened a restaurant serving Earth cuisine. This should have been fine. We had restaurants from dozens of species. Food is usually a safe way to share culture, except Marcus Chen specialized in something called hot wings. Now let me explain something about capsaicin, the chemical compound that makes human food spicy. For most species, capsaicin is somewhere between mildly irritating and actively poisonous. Humans, however, have receptors that register capsaicin as pain, and for reasons that I still do not understand, they enjoy this. They enjoy pain deliberately in their food. Marcus Chen's hot wings were rated on a scale from mild to something called Death Wish Level 7. A Hichian trader trying to impress a human colleague ordered Death Wish Level 7 wings. The medical team had to treat him for chemical burns in his mouth from food. Marcus Chen felt terrible about it and personally apologized. He also, and I am not making this up, offered the Hexin a free meal at any spice level below Death Wish Level 3. The Hixian politely declined and has not been seen near the restaurant since. I implemented new rules requiring warning labels on all human food above a certain spice threshold. Marcus Chen complied cheerfully and business actually increased because apparently half the station wanted to know what dangerous food tasted like. By month 4 of my new position I had dealt with sporting incidents, food-related injuries, and one memorable occasion where a human child's science fair project accidentally created a small electromagnetic pulse that shut down power to an entire deck. The child, a girl named Emma Schultz, apologized profusely and explained that she had just been trying to build a better battery. She was 9 years old. I was seriously considering early retirement when the real crisis hit. It started with a distress call from Station Vorgel 3, the smallest and most remote station under my jurisdiction. The message was brief, encrypted and marked urgent. Observer Tokmar, we have a situation. Please advise immediately. I have learned to hate that word. Situation. I contacted Station Vorkal 3's administrator, a nervous Pelian named Wex, who had only been in the job for 6 months. When his face appeared on my screen, he looked like he had not slept in days. Observer Tokmar, thank the stars. We need help. We need it now. Explain. I said, pulling up Vorkal 3 status reports. We have 12 human families on this station, mostly scientists, some traders, a few military liaisons. 3 days ago, a group of raiders attacked the station. Mercenaries, we think. They damaged our defenses and have taken hostages. My blood ran cold. How many hostages? 47, including 8 human children. Oh no. Have the raiders made demands? I asked, already knowing this was going to get worse. They want control of the station's fuel reserves and safe passage out of council space. They have given us 72 hours. We have 12 hours left. Have you contacted the human military? Wex's face went even paler. That is the problem. We did. The EDF sent a response saying that they have a ship en route, but it will not arrive for another 18 hours. Observer, the human parents are demanding we do something now. They are talking about taking matters into their own hands. Absolutely not, I said immediately. Do not let them do anything. Keep them calm, keep them separated if you have to, and do not under any circumstances let them near the raiders. I have tried, Wex said desperately. But observer, you do not understand. These are human parents. Their children are in danger. They are not listening to reason. I thought about Kelly Winters lifting an 8-foot Thorian off the ground with one hand. I thought about the look in her eyes when someone had threatened her daughter. How many raiders are there? I asked. 15. All heavily armed. They are holding the hostages in the station's cargo bay. And how many human parents are demanding action? 24. I did some quick mental math. 24 human parents versus 15 armed mercenaries. Under normal circumstances, I would say the mercenaries had the advantage, but these were not normal circumstances. These were humans whose children were in danger. I am coming there immediately, I said. In the meantime, do whatever you can to keep the humans calm. Tell them that help is on the way. Tell them that I am personally overseeing the situation. Tell them anything, but do not let them go after those raiders. I will try, Wex said, but he did not sound confident. I grabbed my emergency travel kit and headed for the transport bay. The trip to Vorthak Tree would take 6 hours at maximum speed. 6 hours to figure out how to prevent an interstellar incident in Atikan massacre. I spent those 6 hours reading everything I could about human military tactics, hostage situations, and parental protective instincts. What I learned did not make me feel better. Humans throughout their history have a consistent pattern when it comes to protecting their young. They become, in a word, unstoppable. There are documented cases of human parents performing feats of strength that should be physically impossible. Lifting vehicles, breaking through walls, fighting off multiple attackers, all in defense of their children. There is a biological component to this. When humans perceive a threat to their offspring, their bodies flood with adrenaline and other chemicals that temporarily enhance their strength, speed, and pain tolerance. They call it a rush. Scientists call it a hysterical strength response. I call it terrifying. By the time I arrived at Station Vorgal 3, I had a plan. It was not a good plan, but it was better than letting 24 enraged humans storm a fortified position. Wex met me at the docking bay. He looked even worse in person, his skin taking on an unhealthy gray tint. Status? I asked. The same. The raiders are still in the cargo bay. The hostages are alive, but we have no direct communication with them, and the humans are gathered in conference room 7 demanding updates every 10 minutes. Take me to the humans, I said. Conference room 7 was not designed to hold 20 people, especially not 24 humans who were radiating enough tension to power a small generator. They turned as one when I entered, and I felt the weight of their collective stare. I recognized a few faces from previous reports. Scientists, engineers, a diplomatic attaché. All of them normally calm, rational professionals. Right now they looked like they were ready to tear the station apart with their bare hands. Observer, Tokmar, said a human man I recognized as Dr. James Harding, a xenobiologist. With all due respect, we are done waiting. Our children have been in the hands of those monsters for 3 days. We want action now. I understand your frustration, I began. Do you? Interrupted a woman I did not recognize. Do you have children, observer? I have offspring, yes. 3 of them. When you understand that every second we wait is a second too long. I nodded slowly. I do understand, which is why I need you to trust me. I have a plan, but it requires your cooperation. What kind of plan? Dr. Harding asked suspiciously. The kind that gets your children back safely without anyone getting killed, I said, but I need information first. How many of you have combat training? 12 hands went up. 12 out of 24. That was actually lower than I had feared. How many of you have experience in tactical operations? 5 hands stayed up. And how many of you are willing to follow orders from someone who is not human? All 24 hands went up immediately. That at least was promising. Good, I said. Here is what we are going to do. The EDF ship will arrive in 12 hours. The Raiders' deadline is in 6 hours. We need to buy time and we need to gather intelligence on the cargo bay layout. We already know the layout, said one of the humans with combat training, a former military officer named Lieutenant Sarah Park. 3 of us used to work cargo operations. We know every access point, every ventilation shaft, every structural weakness in that bay. Excellent. Then here is the plan. We are going to convince the Raiders that we are negotiating in good faith. We are going to offer them exactly what they want. What? Several humans said at once. We are going to lie. I said simply. We are going to tell them they can have the fuel and safe passage. We are going to ask for a show of good faith, which means releasing some hostages. Children first, obviously. Once we have your children safe, we can reassess the situation. And if they refuse? Dr. Harding asked. Then we move to Plan B. Which is? I looked at all 24 of them. Plan B is you get your children back the human way. But let us try Plan A first. Yes, there was a long silence. Then Lieutenant Park nodded. We can give you 6 hours. But observer, if those children are not safe by then, we are going in, and nothing you say will stop us. Understood, I said. Because really, what else could I say? The negotiations started immediately. I contacted the Raiders through the station's communication system, speaking to their leader, a Vexorian mercenary who called himself Kroth. We are prepared to discuss your terms, I told him. Discuss? Kroth's voice was rough, filtered through a translator. There is nothing to discuss. You give us what we want or hostages start dying. Unnecessary, I said calmly. We are willing to provide the fuel reserves you requested. However, we need assurances that you will release the hostages unharmed. You will get your assurances when we are safely away from Council space. That is not acceptable. Release half the hostages now as a show of good faith. Children first. Then we will begin transferring the fuel. There was a pause, then Kroth laughed. You think I am stupid? The moment I release hostages, you will try something. No deal. Then we are at an impasse, I said, because I cannot authorize fuel transfer without some guarantee of safety. My superiors will not allow it. Another pause. Longer this time. Fine, I will release 5 hostages. Not children. I keep the children until we are clear. My heart sank. I had suspected this might happen. The Raiders knew that the children were the most valuable bargaining chips. That is unacceptable, I said. But Kroth had already cut the connection. I turned to find all 24 human parents standing behind me. They had heard everything. 6 hours is up, Lieutenant Park said quietly. Time for Plan B. Wait, I said. The EDF ship is only 6 hours away now. Our children have been hostages for 3 days, Dr. Harding said. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. 3 days of fear and trauma. We are not waiting 6 more hours. I looked at Administrator Wex, hoping for support. He looked back at me with an expression that clearly said, "You are on your own. If you do this," I said to the humans, "people will die. Probably the raiders, possibly some of you, and there is a risk to the hostages." "We know," said Lieutenant Park, "which is why we are going to do this smart. We are not going to charge in blindly. We have a plan." Against my better judgment, I asked, "What plan?" What followed was the most terrifying tactical briefing I have ever witnessed. The humans had, in the 3 days since the hostage situation began, managed to compile detailed intelligence on the raiders. They knew patrol patterns, shift changes, equipment loadouts. They had identified 3 separate entry points into the cargo bay and had calculated optimal approach vectors for each. Lieutenant Park laid it out like she was back in military command. Team 1, 5 people will create a distraction at the main cargo entrance. Team 2, another 5 will breach through the ventilation system here. Team 3, the rest of us, will use the maintenance tunnels to position ourselves for extraction once the children are clear. "And what about the raiders?" I asked. 15 armed mercenaries against 24 unarmed civilians. One of the humans, a quiet man who had not spoken until now, smiled grimly. "Who said we are unarmed?" He opened a case on the table. Inside were tools, welding torches, cutting equipment, industrial fasteners. "We work on a space station," he said. "We have access to everything we need." I realized with growing horror that they were serious. Completely, utterly serious. "This is insane," I said. "You are scientists and engineers, not soldiers. 12 of us have military training," Lieutenant Park reminded me. "The rest are human. That is enough. You cannot—" "Observer Tokmar," Dr. Harding interrupted gently. "With all respect, you cannot stop us. You can either help us minimize casualties, or you can watch us do this the hard way. Your choice." I looked at Administrator Wex again. He had gone completely pale and seemed to have given up on having any opinion whatsoever. I thought about Kelly Winters, about Commander Marcus Winters, about everything I had learned over the past 4 months about human protective instincts, and I made a decision that would probably end my career. "Fine," I said, "but we do this right. I will coordinate with station security to ensure we have medical teams standing by. I will monitor communications and provide real-time updates on raider positions. And if this goes wrong, if anyone dies, I am putting it in my official report that I advised against this course of action." Lieutenant Park actually smiled. "Fair enough. We move in 1 hour." That hour was the longest of my life. The humans prepared with frightening efficiency. They divided into teams, distributed their improvised weapons, and went over the plan 3 more times. I watched Dr. Harding, a man who had spent his career studying alien life forms, check the charge on a modified welding torch like he had been doing it his entire life. I contacted station security and, without explaining why, had them position medical teams near the cargo bay. I also quietly had them seal off all surrounding corridors, officially for a safety drill. When the hour was up, Lieutenant Park looked at her teams. "Remember," she said quietly, "we are not here to fight. We are here to get our children back. Speed and precision. In and out. Everyone goes home." 24 humans nodded in unison. And then they moved. I have seen military operations. I have watched training exercises from a dozen different species armed forces. I have never seen anything like watching 24 human parents execute a hostage rescue. Team 1 hit the main entrance exactly on schedule, using a cutting torch to slice through the locking mechanism and then triggering the fire suppression system. The sudden noise and foam created chaos. Team 2 dropped through the ventilation shaft with timing so precise it had to have been practiced. They landed in the cargo bay's upper level and immediately began using magnetic grapples, tools meant for hull repairs, to incapacitate raiders. Team 3 moved through the maintenance tunnels like water finding cracks, appearing exactly where they needed to be to cut off raider escape routes. The entire operation took 9 minutes. 9 minutes from first breach to the last raider being subdued. The hostages, all 47 of them, were extracted without a single serious injury. The 8 human children were reunited with their parents in scenes that made even my cold, bureaucratic hearts ache. Of the 15 raiders, 3 were seriously injured. The rest were restrained and awaiting council security. None were killed, and somehow, miraculously, not a single human parent had more than minor cuts and bruises. When the EDF ship arrived 6 hours later, They found the situation completely resolved. The ship's captain, a woman named Commander Lisa Torres, listened to my report with an expression that cycled between disbelief, horror, and what might have been pride. "Let me get this straight," she said. 24 civilian humans launched an unsanctioned rescue operation against armed mercenaries and suffered 0 casualties. "Correct," I said tiredly. I had been awake for 30 hours straight and my grammar was suffering. "And you allowed this?" I tried to stop them. They explained that they were doing it with or without my cooperation. I chose cooperation. Commander Torres was quiet for a long moment, then she started laughing. "Observer Tokmar, I am going to put you in for a commendation. Do you know why? I truly do not. Because you did something that most council officials cannot do. You understood humans. You understood that when our children are threatened, nothing else matters. You worked with that instead of against it. That is more diplomatic skill than most ambassadors show in their entire careers." The commendation did come through, eventually, along with a promotion to regional compliance director and a substantial raise, but more importantly, the incident at Vorgol 3 became required study material for all council personnel working with humans. It even got a formal name in the training materials, the Vorgol 3 demonstration, because that is what it was really. A demonstration of what happens when you threaten human children and then get out of the way. 6 months later I was back in my office on Station Meridian 7 reviewing reports and trying to prevent the next crisis, when I got an unexpected visitor. Kelly Winters, along with her daughter Emma, now 7 years old and apparently fully recovered from her traumatic experience. "Observer Tokmar," Kelly said warmly. "I hope we are not interrupting." "Not at all," I said, genuinely pleased to see them. "What brings you to Meridian 7? "Marcus got assigned here for a 6-month rotation. We decided to make it a family posting." She smiled at her daughter. "Emma wanted to thank you personally." Emma Winters stepped forward, holding a small package. "My mom told me you helped make sure the bad man who hit me got in trouble." "Thank you." I took the package, touched in a way that surprised me. "You are very welcome, Emma, but I was just doing my job." "My mom says that doing your job right is harder than people think," Emma said seriously. Inside the package was a drawing. It showed what I assumed was me, all 4 legs and greenish skin carefully rendered in crayon, standing next to several human figures. At the top, in a child's handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for keeping us safe." I may have had something in all 3 of my eyes at that moment. Kelly smiled. "We also wanted you to know that the families from Vortavral 3 have put together a thank you gift for you. They are calling it the Tokmar Protocol. It is a set of guidelines for council human cooperation during crisis situations. They are submitting it to the council for official adoption." "That is unnecessary," I said. But I was smiling. "Maybe," Kelly said. "But we wanted you to know that humans appreciate when other species try to understand us. We know we are difficult. We know our instincts do not always make sense to others, but you tried. That mattered." After they left, I hung Emma's drawing on my office wall right next to my official commendations and certificates. And I thought about everything I had learned over the past cycles. Humans are strong. Humans are competitive. Humans are protective of their young to a degree that borders on irrational. But humans are also fair. They seek justice, not vengeance. They follow laws, even when emotions run high. They can be reasoned with, as long as you understand what drives them. And most importantly, humans remember who stands with them when it matters. I have been a bureaucrat in the Galactic Council for 18 cycles now. I have dealt with countless species, managed hundreds of disputes, and filed more reports than I care to count. But the humans taught me something that no amount of training or experience could have provided. They taught me that sometimes the most dangerous species in the galaxy is also the most worth protecting. Because when you stand with humanity, when you truly try to understand them and work with them rather than against them, they will move stars to protect you in return. Just do not ever, ever threaten their children. Trust me on that one. I learned it the hard way. And I have the drawing on my wall to prove it.